I was a football player and played defensive end. Now, for those of you that may not be familiar with the defensive end position, when the other team has the ball, you're trying to rush in, tackle the quarterback, or tackle the person with the ball. When I was growing up, my father was a very effective motivational speaker. Well, that wasn't his profession. He just spoke at home. Maybe you had a parent like this as well. And speeches tend to be very short and right to the point. Here was one of my dad's motivational speeches. Roger, you don't live in Pity City. That kind of summed it up right there. So my entire life, I grew up with the notion that my life wasn't different than another person's life. Everybody faced adversity. It just happened that mine was visible. But that I wasn't at a disadvantage. You see, I could be an athlete that happened to have a physical challenge, a speaker that happened to have a physical challenge, a writer that happened to have a physical challenge, not a physically challenged writer or a physically challenged speaker. So I got very involved in athletics. In one particular football game, I'll never forget, I got down into position. The quarterback on the other team went back to pass. And the play started to develop. And out of the corner of my eye, I saw this young man on my team rush in and tackle the quarterback before I could get there. But when he grabbed a hold of the quarterback, he fumbled the football. The ball bounced into my arms and I started running. I had clarity of vision. I was heading to the end zone. And I started to run. So I'm at the 50, the 40, the 30, the 20. Now I'm at the 10-yard line. So I'm 10 yards away from the end zone. A young man on the other team catches up with me. He makes a valiant attempt to tackle me, and, well, I was fortunate that day. He grabbed a hold of my left leg. You really are sharp. You're so far ahead of me on this. My leg came right off. I hop into the end zone. You could have heard a pin drop. I mean, the opposing coach walks over to the ref. Hey, ref, what's the ruling on that? Ref's like, his knee didn't touch the ground. It's a touchdown. So I'm speaking to a group. There's a gentleman in the audience who is also a speaker. I finish my talk. He makes a beeline for me. Hey, Raj, can I talk to you for a moment? I said, sure. He said, Roger, I'm writing a book. And he said, I was in the audience today and I heard your football story and I immediately thought, wow, that would be a great story for my book. I said, hey, thank you so much for asking. You know, I'd be thrilled to be part of your project. He said, now, Raj, before you say yes, I need to tell you, I can't compensate you in any way. I said, Jack, that's not a problem at all. I just feel really honored that you would ask me to be included. He said, Roger, that's great. I really appreciate it. He said, I'll need you to sign this release form. I said, sure. So I'm filling it out, and I ask him this. I said, who's your publisher? He smiled at me and said this. Roger Crawford, at this present time, we don't have a publisher. But I want you to know that this book is going to be #1 on the New York Times bestseller list September 1st of next year. All of us in this room would agree that is absolute clarity. You know what I thought? What about the distribution? I mean, how is this book going to be #1 on the New York Times bestseller list? I mean, how is this book going to be marketed in bookstores, Amazon.com? So I asked him this. What's the title of your book? He said, Chicken Soup for the Soul. It was the very first book. If you have it at home, look on page 152. You're going to read that football story that I just shared with you. Here's what's fascinating. The book was #1 on the New York Times bestseller list. Do you know when? August, not September. So I asked Jack Canfield, I said, did anybody tell you that was impossible? He said, yes, they did. That's why I gave myself a little extra time. He said, because the impossible always takes a little longer than the possible. So I'm at home in my office, and I received this letter. Dear Roger, I read Chicken Soup for the Soul, and I wish you could have been with me as I read your football story. Roger, I burst out laughing. I immediately ran out to recite this story to my kids. You see, Roger, I'm the guy that pulled your leg off. He's now a high school football coach in Northern California, and I have the great honor of visiting with his team every year, and we tell this story together. So where are you coming from? How long have you been there? And where are you going?